Okay, here's the next video on the Snowko matchup. And this one also depends on which version you play against, because right now there are multiple ones, like for example the Hull Breacher version or some Miracles version, and all differ a little bit, but the general game plan I think stays the same. Okay, so as I think the matchup goes is game one can be tough because when you draw two lightning bolts effects, it's not good for you. And yeah, these are the bad cards, I think, game one, the lightning bolts. I mean, one can be okay for finishing, but the other ones are not good normally. And you have a lot of cards post-board which swing the matchup, kinda. Not that you're 80%, but you're better against them. Okay, so winning game one is good. How do you win? You win with connecting with Arcanist or flooding them with threats in general, like them not being able to deal with Young Pyromancer can be a thing. Having multiple Delvers can be a thing. Oko can be a thing. So the threat base is a way. There is a rather fringe one. How you can win is when you, and this is also sometimes a little bit of a gamble, but they can stumble on their mana base. Let's say they go Forest Astrolabe. This can also be a trap set up by them, but then this might be that they don't have another land. And if you are in the play and play the Delver, and maybe ideal situation, you have a second one, you daze the Astrolabe, play your Delver, and then you can win. But be aware of that plan having a fail rate. Their mana base is kind of good, and don't rely on this plan too much. You have to have either be desperate, and I will show one game where I was kind of desperate and was kind of rewarded for going after their mana base, but this will fail sometimes. Okay, this is your game one plan. Overwhelm them with threats, and I will talk about shortly how you will lose is when you draw 2 or 3 lightning bolts early. Your mana can sometimes stumble, but with every deck that's possible. Or you, and rather than they have Uro, let's say they have turn 1 Astrolabe, turn 2 removal for your maybe only threat, maybe the Arcanist, and you have your Delver left. And then you cantrip a bunch, and they cantrip a bunch, and then they escape the Uro, and it's game over, even though you have the Delver. And you can try to counter it, but they also have their forces, and it's Uro kills you a lot. Yeah, sometimes Oko from their deck also is very problematic because they can animate their Astrolabes, and this is better than you having your Oko where you don't have the Astrolabes. Yeah. So what does change postboard? Sideboarding out is a little bit more difficult than sideboarding in, so I will just put cards here which are good. This is your control killer, I guess, which will win a lot of the times and will prevent Uro a lot of the times, not always. When they have enough land, they can play it and escape it in the same turn, or when they play it before you have the Clothis, they can still escape it sometimes. And in addition to that, Uro, when they play 3 or 4 copies of it is really problematic, so you should have an additional answer, I think. So this is another way to get ahead, because they don't threaten your life total. And what I have to say is, if the opponent, especially in game 1, I think, when you have a creature on the board like a Delver and they play the library and you have the opportunity to counter, I think you should let it resolve most of the time. You have to consider how your hand looks like, but they cannot take a lot of cards from it because they are in real danger when they do. When you have the Delver and let's say they are, you attack them in the next turn to 12, do they go to 8 when you counter their next play and then they are at 5 and die with 2 bolts? Really consider it to let it resolve. On the empty board, obviously scary. Okay, next up, there is Pyroblast effects are good. And I think the rest is not very useful. Okay, these are 8 cards. And so what I do is I cut at least 3 bolts. Let's put these down here. Cut 3 bolts because you don't want to flood on them. Sometimes I cut 4 when I expect the opponent to be a more controllish approach. It depends. 1 Daze and 1 Wasteland at least, and I normally prefer to cut 2 of each. I don't board out everything because Daze has its value sometimes, and sometimes they play around it. It's a high variance card in the games. And also Wasteland is sometimes okay, sometimes it's bad, but you don't have to forget that it also makes a mana. And I don't think it's good to cut all them, have 15 lands and expect to play your 3 drops. I think 2 is okay. This is my plan at least. And we're missing 1 card. We have 5 forces, and a lot of the times I do this, but if you cut the force of negation, it's not a major difference. But this you can cast more easy, and this can counter everything basically. So I'm not sure. I think I will stay on this plan for a while, and this would be my sideboarding. And sometimes it's hard to figure out on which version they are exactly. Do they have, nowadays the newest spice is having 2 Dreadhot Arcanists in the main deck for them, and you have to react for that. If you see them, maybe it's have at least 3 bolts, then maybe a 4th when they also have Hull Breacher or Plague Engineer. This is also something where you have to be experienced to kind of evaluate how much bolts you need. And if you're on the play, maybe you can play a 4th bolt and 1 less force or something like that. But I think this is a good plan. And so what changes in the dynamics postboard? You have really good threats here. So your threat density goes up, and especially these are really hard to remove. And well, your answers package also gets better. This is also kind of an answer, but not one I really like. I would like to have Soul Guide Lantern for this matchup, but it is what it is. This can also be played against Mystic Sanctuary or a French Snapcaster. Does this card exist anymore? I don't know. But this is good for Kodals, Okos, also Uros, all the blue shenanigans going on. Okay, what does change? You have these resilient threats, and you want to play just, yeah, I want to say jam threats. Sometimes you have to be careful, but these threats will get you ahead, especially these on the bottom. So now you're a low land count deck, so I think forcing key plays is a valid choice in this matchup. But you have to be careful. They also play Pyroblast, and sometimes they bring in Veil of Summer, and this can devastate you. So you have to carefully look how they tap their mana, and then also keep in mind how desperate you are. This is a key way to evaluate whether you should force something or not. This comes with practice, I think. Should be your game plan versus Snowko.